absolutely. And I think so it absolutely does. And obviously that scenario is so telling for my family. So you know instantly one of my vulnerable things that I'm working on, feeling taken for granted, is one that I think I've carried from a long way, all the way back to my childhood, that I'm still working to kind of make space for and feel fully and release. And I think for my son, like I knew that it would matter to him, like I just, because I know him, right? And he was quite happy to say, I'm sorry mom, refolded the clothes and then packed them away. And so I knew from an issue perspective that we would be able to work it out together. But it was in that moment, as the emotions came up, I wasn't sure that I had in that moment the right tools to communicate how I felt, but to also ask for changes in behavior at the same time.
Yeah.
So many parents face this every single day. So many people in partnerships face this just like over and over and over and over again.
So let's help you out a little bit, because this is a historical thing that you're bringing to this moment.
Yes.
It's really helpful to separate out issues or descriptions from feelings. So a couple of times we've heard you say, I from my childhood, I've had a feeling of being taken for granted, taken advantage of. So that's a description of an experience. If that were true, that you're taken advantage of, what does that feel like?
It feels lonely, sometimes abandoned almost by the people that you think should care the most.
Okay, so if you were abandoned, how does that feel? Lonely,
sad, maybe a bit of desperation in there, even like that kind of longing and clinging.
Yeah. So what happens when we approach somebody and we really want to be heard and understood on an emotional level, but by accident we use words like taken advantage of, or abandoned, or ignored, or disrespected. Those are descriptions of a happening. They're not emotions. And you can tell when you've accidentally used one of those because the other person goes, versus if you come towards somebody and say, I feel lonely, I feel desperate, I feel sad, I feel yearning, right? They're like, what? Really? Right? You get a versus a, I respect you. I'm not disrespecting you. Like, I'm not taking advantage of you. I was an accident, right? You get more of that. So when we really want to be with ourselves in the emotion, we're probably going to reach for words like that. It's so common. I just feel disrespected. I just feel ignored. I just feel, which actually aren't emotions. And so we don't get that neurochemical hit. It's story that gets us juiced, but without the release. And so a really key phrase is, if that's true, that I'm abandoned, if it's true that I'm being taken advantage of, if it's true that I'm ignored, if it's true that I'm disrespected, how do I feel? And it's a little more boring, right? It's like lonely, sad, mad, right? Those are just like, okay, not the juiciest of words, but when they land, like we saw it land in your body, you said, like,
I feel it as you say it. I feel the difference, and I can see how quickly what I was describing before pushes somebody back into their defensive mode, like they're back in primitive space saying compared to the feeling. Because I think even saying the feeling, I drop deeper, I can feel that I've created a space for a deeper connection between us. So
and you can tell that you've done your exploration well when you get that right. You want to cry, maybe. You definitely feel like
after I got with the word desperate, the emotion desperate, like that was deeper than just sadness and loneliness. Desperate, really, like I felt my inner girl in that emotion. All right, this was not meant to be a coaching session for me.
That's not what I was skill sets.
That is beautiful. I want to talk about holding boundaries with empathy and compassion. So as a family, we created some boundaries together. We didn't go with the dictator style, so we've kind of worked in them together that matched our family values.
Yeah.
How as parents do we hold them with sort of the flexibility that we need at times, but with compassion and empathy so that we can move forward?
I think this is actually a really great segue from what we were just talking to this part. I think we've taken nonviolent communication from was it Mark Rosenthal? But the nonviolent communication model, and we've sort of tweaked it a little bit to be a little bit more emotionally safe. So we say we'll say things like, when, you know, I'll go back to the example of the laundry. When I come back in the room and I see the laundry's been kicked off the couch or whatever the exact thing happening is, I feel loneliness, I feel sadness, I feel desperation. I have a need for, you know, consistency,
mutuality, cooperation,
any needs like that. And then a request. Would you be willing to, and then we already sort of workshop that, you know, put the headset on further away from the couch, or, you know, watch out for the laundry while I'm folding it, something like that. And then we wait for the response, because sometimes it's like, yeah, I'm totally willing to do that. That'd be great. I really care about your need and I want to help you meet it. That's probably more of an adult response than a kid response, but they may still say yes. Other times they'll say, no, I don't want to do that.
That doesn't make sense. It doesn't work for the game. Like, I can't step away over there just because the laundry's here. And you go, huh.
Then you ask, what would you be willing to do to help me meet this need and to honor my request, or honor my preference here, or honor the agreement that we previously made? And then you can do a similar or slightly modified version for if you already have an agreement in place for some boundaries. Hey, remember when we agreed to blah, blah, blah? When that doesn't happen, I feel this way and I need these things. And would you be willing to honor the agreement or do the thing?
Or would you be willing to redesign the agreement with me so that it's more likely to happen? Or would you be willing to brainstorm what we do when we've made an agreement but we don't want to follow it anymore? Or
and I think starting from that,
I love that you're saying keep coming back to the conversation, keep coming back to each other.
Yeah, I think that starting point, though, that you mentioned already, of working together to create the boundaries, is such a pivotal and important piece, because then you're much more likely to have buy-in from the children. They want to be involved, you know, they got to plan it out. And so then it's easier to remind them that they agreed to it. They have more buy-in. There's more of a likelihood that they see how it meets some of their needs. It just is a much, much better place to start than, these are the rules and you got to follow the rules. And hey, kid, you're not following the rule. You know?
Which is actually like when people say boundaries work, I'm cringing already, because typically what people mean by that is, I'm going to say some things to you and then you better do it or else you're in trouble. And it's like, who wants to work with that? Nobody. Like, I have a boundary. You have to listen to me for as long as I talk. It's like, well, I don't agree to that. I'm going to walk out of the room right now. Right. And the other person goes, I have a boundary. I was so clear about it. It's like, well, you were erroneous in your boundary foundation. Boundaries are agreements. Boundaries are, what do I need? What are my feelings? What are my needs? And how do I want to team up? If I'm teaming up with somebody, how do I want to team up with them to get those needs met? The only boundaries that you can just declare and have are ones that you can enforce yourself, right? Like, I feel really lonely when the person I'm talking to can't hear me. So the boundary I have for myself is that I'm going to walk into the room where they are before I start talking. That's a boundary I have with myself, which is something I can enforce, something I can honor, versus you have to listen to me when I talk. When you hear me talking, stop what you're doing and come find me wherever I'm talking so you can start listening. Like, you have no control over that. So it's not even a fun endeavor yet, It is when people embark on boundaries, that's typically the direction they go. Find out what rules they want to throw at other people. And then they all crash down and people reject it and they go, oh, they just walk all over my boundaries.
I think this is a great segue because in the same way, I think we've tainted the word boundaries. We've also come up with nice soft words to replace punishment, like consequences. And so I wanted to talk about why, because I love your explanation and I think it's really powerful for us to share here. Why approaching conversations with more empathy and compassion is a lot more powerful for our kids than punishment, irrespective of what name we call it.
Well, the first kind of most obvious answer to that is that it switches the onus of focus for the child. So if they do something that we don't like and then we punish them, they don't think, oh, Papa didn't like that or Mama didn't like that, I probably won't do that again. They think, I've been punished. This terrible thing has happened to me. It's not fair. Why does this always happen to me? Why do they hate me? It goes in that direction. And so their focus is almost solely on themselves in a punishment moment.
Because punishment sends people to their survival brain, and the survival brain is only self-focused.
Yeah.
So
and
works against you if you want your kids cooperating.
Yeah. And if you really want them to understand what's going on for you or for anyone else, like say they were having an altercation between two siblings or two friends or whatever, is to bring empathy into the room and offer it for everybody involved so that they not only see that modeled, but then their mirror neuron system picks up on it. And so they're starting to offer it back even before they're cognizant of doing so. And it just creates this system of considering other people's experience, which is really what we want our kids to do, not just follow the rules, because when they go off in life, they're going to be in relationships. They're going to have to tune into the other person, not just, okay, give me your list of rules, and then I'll do everything that's on them, except for number 11, which I totally don't agree with.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Punishment, what ends up happening is that so like love withdrawal or physical punishment or taking something away that is important to them, again, puts them into this like a self-focused threat, right? That's a threat. That is literally what it is. It's a threat. And we know what neurochemistry does in response to threat. It goes into the survival brain. It's just fight, flight, freeze, or appease. And so what ends up happening is that kids don't go, oh, okay, Mama and Papa like it better if I do this way. Or even if they do, that's terrible because they then are moved. Okay, two things. One, if there's the threat, they just figure out how to avoid the threat. Right? So they get sneakier, they, get super good at you just not catching them at the thing that you will then threaten them about. Or they're like, okay, and they memorize what Mama and Papa like and what Mama and Papa don't like. And what you've now done to that child, and this happened to me, was you have set them up to remove their internal compass of values and alignment and looking to be in cooperation with people and partner with them and consider other people's situations. Instead, you have turned their focus to whoever is in power, I want to be pleasing to them. So like for me, that meant get good grades, be quiet, don't be angry, basically don't be my full self because that might not be likable. And so what you end up doing is setting up a kid to live a life of, what's the word I'm looking for? Vigilance, anxious vigilance, where they're like, is this move likable? Is this move likable? So that kid is not going to impromptu dance or explore an activity that they may not be good at or reveal their true self on stage. Nope, that kid is going to be, just wanting to stay within the good graces of the people or hide and be themselves, but be hidden.
That's what I did.
I was just good. Nathan was hidden.
Yeah.
So we ditch it all together. We ditch it completely. And instead we just do this brain state thing instead They're in their survival brain, meet the survival needs, wait. Now they're in their emotional brain, meet those emotional needs, listen to the story, pull out the feelings, set up connection, move into the executive brain. All right, we're two people in relationship together. What do we want to do about this? Because that didn't work for me, and this doesn't work for you. What do we do?
Beautiful. Let's push that what do we do question. So now we're dealing with teens and we have disagreement about what we should do. How do we have that disagreement in a way that still honors each other and all that we feel and find ways forward?
I love that question. Can I want to bridge from where we were before to here, because I think there's a strategy for being with our kids when they're younger, and we've agreed to something, and there's a plan in place, or we're taking some action or not taking some action, and the child doesn't like it. Sometimes we just have to hold that, and we have to be like, I know you really want to, I know you really don't want to, but this is what we agreed to, this is what we need to follow through with. And we refer to that as a seawall that we sometimes hold for our children's emotions to break against.
We're not having cookies before dinner. Right?
And we want that, even though that's an uncomfortable thing for a lot of us. We want that emotional part to open up so that we can be with them and process it and get it out of there. Yeah. And then usually when that happens, then whatever the boundary was that we were holding, it's a lot easier for them to deal with once they've had the emotion come up and out around it. The similar thing can happen with teens, although as our children age, we're basically consistently handing them more power so that they will be able to stand on their own when they leave our homes, instead of needing a parent to tell them what to do all the time. So it becomes more and more and more and more important to come back to agreement. I get that you don't want to do this. I still want this to happen. What can we agree to? Or, that's not what we agreed to do before. I want to hold us to the agreement. How can we renegotiate?
And when it seems like it's at a standstill, or like there's not a match, it can be really helpful to pull the needs out from the situation. So the kid says, I want to go out driving on a country road with 8 kids and stay out until the morning. And you're like, I don't like that. And they're like, I do. And you're like, I don't. And so it's like, so to pull out the needs, like, okay, so you have a real need to like belong, right? And you have a real need for a high social activity right now. And you have a need for the freedom. Like, that's what I hear in the, like, it's dark and country road and middle of the night. Like, that sounds like freedom. They're like, yeah. Right. And you're like, okay, I have a need for safety, and I have a need for predictability. And I have a need for
maybe trust.
Yeah, trust, or just for you to not die, just real basic survival,
safety,
safety again. So what do we do? Right. And so this was actually a scenario we were up against. And so we were able to make agreements within that. So like, okay, you want freedom to pick the location that you guys are going to park and be in the woods. Like, okay, drop us a pin when you get there, because that meets my need for, if something goes down, we know right where to go to get you. And then let's have a check-in time at this time and this time, because I'll meet my need for predictability. And they're like, okay, but can I go with all of those friends? And we're like, 8? I don't know, it doesn't seem like it fits in the car. They're like, practical considerations, who cares? We're like, I guess that part's up to you. Like, does that meet your need for freedom? You can figure out where you're going, who's going, but meet these other things for me. And they're like, yeah, okay, yeah, that works, right? So now you've got a kid that's like, yeah, I love this agreement.
And you probably noticed there that part of what we're training them to do over the course of years, but in this interaction that Natalie is describing, is how to do this once they're out on their own. Because this is what relationship is like. So frequently parents wind up training their children to just obey or not, and not actually relate.
Yeah.
And then they go out on their own and they don't know how to relate, and the parents are like, what's going on?
Why do you just follow whatever your friends do?
Yeah,
like your friends say jump, you jump. What's that about?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think?
You know what I love about that? And it's something that I tell my kids all the time, that there's always a way to create solutions that meet all of our needs. But you have to be willing to move beyond the surface. You have to be willing to dive deeper and really understand what we need. And I think of it like an iceberg, what's really beneath. So at the top is, I just want my freedom. I want to go and I don't want you to tell me anything. But beneath it, it's a little more. And in that dance, parents can move away from, well, because I said so. Right, and find common ground. I can talk to you guys forever, but I'm gonna be mindful of your time.